It's Just Business with Steve Thomas and your host, Chris Larry.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of It's Just Business on the Hogside Network, the show where we look at the dollars and the cents of the sports, media, business, industrial complex in all of its municipal, bureaucratic glory. How you doing today, Steve?
I'm doing very well. I'm excited about municipal bureaucratic glory. I mean, that's what we live for on this show. And our third cast member is sitting right here beside me, and he was barking crazily at three dogs being walked like literally 10 seconds ago. So he will chime in, when he feels necessary to make a point or when he disagrees with you. He's always going to agree with me.
Right. Well, hopefully the greater Houston area suburban dog walkers take a break in your neighborhood today.
Let's hope. But the problem is, like, September in the Houston area is better weather because then it's not 100 degrees. It's only like in the 80s to 90s. And so there's, it's probably a better dog walking time than like August. August is pretty brutal. Oh, see, there you go.
Well, maybe your dog is just celebrating what looks like the final last one. We're not going to have it again. Vote, legislative hurdle for the new Washington Commanders Stadium at the old RFK site. That was voted, I think, 11-2, something like that. 11-3.
Yeah, I think it was 11 to. I know it was 2 or 3 down votes. I don't know how many are on council in DC.
I think it was at least 10 or 11. So passed with flying colors, you could say. And I think by all of my reading here, Steve, this means that they will do a groundbreaking ceremony at some point. I think and probably get to work on this fairly soon.
Oh, yeah. And first of all, Alex East is the guy, my Hogsty partner is the guy who follows DC City Council really closely because he's a resident of the district and whatnot. And he said one of those negative votes is somebody who votes against all public funding for stuff like this, which would be me, incidentally. And so they really only had 2 that were, against it in substance, and the deal did get changed somehow. We have not seen whatever got changed. I have a feeling they were arguing about things on the periphery, probably that probably doesn't matter too much to to Washington fans. But the big picture point here is the stadium will be built. There will be lots of surrounding development around it, housing, some commercial development stuff. There's sports fields, lots of stuff, and they always do groundbreakings for these kind of things. And there'll be some sort of ribbon cutting thing as well. I've been to lots of those type of events, so it is a good first step. And it's going to be a couple years, but this is a good step. Now, apparently, I'm told that the RFK Stadium is almost gone at this point, which is a bit sad.
Yeah, I think they even did they've already started some of the controlled.
Oh, they have. That's what I'm saying. It's I think if you look at it, Alex said that there's been photos and he's been by it and it's literally a shell of itself. I meant that in like a literal sense.
Yeah, I drove by it actually last fall, and which is I think is before some of this recent controlled demolition, and even then it looked like a bizarre. You could film a post-apocalyptic movie
Will
there.
Smith's movie in there somewhere, maybe.
Exactly. So the blight was ready to be reborn. I think they're committing now. Who knows? Steve knows better than me, but these things have a way of not hitting timelines. But I think they're committed to 3 years.
Well, yeah, and that's the reason for that is that the lease at FedEx Field is up in 3 years. Because remember, even though the Josh Harris Group owns the site, the team has a lease, and all this stuff is tied to construction financing and stuff. And so, and I want to say that Prince George's County has some kind of reversionary rights at some point. And so all of this, it's much cleaner and easier for Josh Harris if it just gets done in 3 years. That's the point.
Yeah. So, we'll see. The next news story that any of us will see about this will definitely be Josh Harris in a burgundy and gold hard hat, with the shovel to the
ground.
ground.
Oh yeah, groundbreaking. Yeah, that's definitely true.
That'll be the next headline that you see on that. So we'll see. I think it's hysterical. I was just because now the Eagles are claiming they need a new stadium.
Didn't they just get a new stadium like 15 years ago or something?
Well, it was closer to 25, but that was my point.
Okay.
That was my point. I'm like, and that this goes for FedEx too, by the way. I'm like, in my brain, they just went up. I
Means
remember.
you're old, man.
Yeah, I know. That's the frightening part. I'm like, wait, because I was at the opening, because I used to go to Washington, Philadelphia. I think I said this before. Washington, Philadelphia, in Philadelphia every year for like 4 or 5 years. So I was at the last like 3 games at the old Vet, and then the first game at Lincoln Financial. And I'm like, in my brain, that was like a couple weeks ago. And I'm like, wait, they need a new stadium already? But these stadiums, but they were, you know what? They were shoddy. They weren't forward looking, and they became antiquated real quick. Typically you should not be replacing a stadium in 25 years.
Well, true. I mean, RFK was a shoddy place too, remember? But we loved it because we were all Redskins fans.
You know what I'm saying? But they rushed these new ones, and they cut corners, and they built bad stadiums.
I mean, in the case of FedEx Field, Jack Kent Cooke fully financed it and funded it himself, and so they kind of did do it on the cheap. I mean, in terms of in the realm of stadium development, they kind of did it on the cheap. Yes.
And I also just think it was an era where they just were building,
cookie
these
cutter
kind of bad
stadiums.
Yeah, right. And that's not what people want anymore. So
but
that's why these
know
owners are in a rush to replace them too.
What's the thing called up there? The Link? I mean,
well, it's Lincoln Financial, so they call it a Link. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know it was. I thought it was newer than that.
I'd have to see. I could probably go and date it. It's probably. I think they probably around like 2000, 2001, 2 probably is when its first year was.
Regardless, the point is,
look it up, people.
Yeah, I'm gonna look now. You're driving me Lincoln Financial Field. Financial. Here it is, Lincoln Financial Field. Drum roll, please. Let's see. Quick facts. Field size surface scoreboard broke ground in May of 2001, opened in August of 2003.
All right, so there you go.
So it's not that old. It's 22 years old.
It's not even 25 years old yet.
They don't need a new stadium.
There you go. So yay, Washington. I think many of us thought this may never happen, or that but they cleared the hurdles, and there were many hurdles. It was like Olympic hurdle sprint.
Remember, I was saying DC was in last place because there's so many hurdles, but congrats to them for getting it done.
Yep. So we'll see. Got a little interesting this week, but ultimately it is a done deal and behind us.
There was some political mumbo jumbo going back and forth, but it got done.
You saw the value of the Commanders hiring a new head of business operations because he wrote a stern letter.
Yeah, it was a sternly worded letter that he published. Yeah, I saw that.
So he got his first touchdown as his new hire.
This is what happens when you don't have clowns, working.
Right.
There's these guys are pros and business people, not morons that drink scotch all day or whatever Bruce Allen drank.
Right, and bet on putt in office putt or whatever.
Exactly.
All right, so let's get on to more important stuff. We are smacked at, and we recorded our last show. I think it was right before the NFL kickoff or after the Thursday, but before the Sunday. Blah blah blah. But now we're squarely in mid-season mode by week 3, with the NFL dominating all headlines across the sports business front page, entertainment page, across all sections of your theoretical newspaper. So let's start at we saw the Cowboys. Yeah, see, Cody doesn't like this.
Hey, I know. It was the Cowboys mention. That's it.
But that kicks off, just valuations are skyrocketing. We always know that the Cowboys are going to lead that list. But it is crazy how much they've gone up. And then we also have some information about all kinds of ways in which the NFL is slicing and dicing their revenue. But Steve, are you shocked at all about these new valuations of NFL teams?
I I'm a little bit surprised that the Cowboys are this high. So, okay. So we've done a couple valuation stories. These are CNBC's sports valuations. And this is published this week. Well, a week ago, 2 weeks ago, September 4th. And the story is Cowboys now worth a record 12.5 billion. 10 other NFL teams valued at more than 8 billion by Michael Ozanian, who's like, he might as well be a part of the show at this point. So how CNBC has this, if we go all the way down to the chart, they've got Dallas number one, lagging far behind of the Rams at 10.7 billion, the Giants at 10.5 billion, the Raiders at 9.3 billion, Patriots 9.25, Jets at 9.1, Bears 8.9, 49ers 8.6, Dolphins 8.55, Philadelphia Eagles at 8.5, and then Washington, for those wondering, is down at 7.4 billion, which is what, $1.5 billion more than what
put
Josh
some change in
bought.
Magic Johnson's pocket potentially.
Yeah, potentially. So no, this and by the way, they've got net revenue and EBITDA in here, and so we'll go over a couple of these. So Dallas, by far and away, by an enormous margin, is the most revenue and the most EBITDA. EBITDA is interest before earnings, taxes, and
Annuities.
1.727 billion in revenues. The next closest is the Rams at 875 million, and so they're 400 million over the next team. Washington is all the way down at 670 million in terms of revenue, and EBITDA. Dallas is killing everybody in EBITDA. It's 577 million compared to 252 million by the Rams. So they're 100% more than the next team. And then Washington is at 149 million. And then debt. You want to hear some debt as percentage of value? Here we go. Dallas is 2%.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That's the best number you've said for them all day.
Yes. And the Rams are at 28%. The Giants are at 4%. Because see, this isn't a coincidence. So these are the Giants, Dallas. They've had ownership groups that have a long time, out. So I've been willing to bet Washington's number is pretty high, 14%.
I think this is the third generation of Maras to own the team.
It's at least the second. It may be the third. I'll take your word for it. That is, and the 28% with the Rams, which is Stan Kroenke, and it's no doubt because of the stadium. Just
right, that's the financing debt, right?
Yeah,
Probably
that is by a huge margin the most in the NFL. The second most actually is Washington at 14%.
Yeah, and it's merry bandit of owners. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's 25 different owners, right? So that is the data. None of this surprised me. And I know a lot of people listen to this, hate Dallas and all of that, but Jerry Jones is a marketing genius. He's bullied the NFL into letting him keep some of the revenue. If you read the CBA like I did, because I'm a nerd like that, there are carve-outs in the CBA for Dallas local marketing revenue, just Dallas.
Of which I think that same CNBC article that breaks down the numbers of these valuations, I think it's almost 500 million that Dallas makes a year on marketing, which is, again, that doesn't go into the communist pot. That goes into Jerry's pocket.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And that's probably why his revenue is so high compared to everybody. Obviously, it's why his revenue. So the revenue is marketing and ticketing. And I want to say 34% of ticketing goes into a communist pot. And so meaning then that they're keeping 66% locally. And so the revenue is a combination of that 66% of ticket revenue and then the local marketing revenue. And then, the communist share, the Marxist share of the master
media deals, NFL, basically
media deals, and then the revenue from the, merchandising and stuff, which everybody's getting the same cut of that. I'm not surprised at all about that. Am I surprised at 12.5 billion? Yes. I wouldn't have guessed more than 10. I mean, between 10 and 11 is what I would have guessed.
Yeah, no, it definitely was. It was definitely eye popping, and and all you got to sort of do is look at Washington's jump, and it really is not that much time, right? Just show you, high rises lift all boats. And I think Josh Harris is doing a good job of catching up on some of these things too. So I think you'll probably see them continue to kind of climb up these lists. And obviously with the stadium deal, that was a big thing for him to close on. But yeah, I mean now it's undisputed. I think that even some of these massive soccer clubs are probably underneath Dallas at this point.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I just got to emphasize, I mean, for the Washington fans out there, this is what happens when you have clowns running who don't know anything, running your franchise for a generation. This is how you end up at the bottom of a list like this. And now that you have a professional, it's building up, but they're not going to jump to the front of the line immediately. Dallas has a history of being the most would like it or not, the most popular team in the end. They're probably the most popular team. They might be the most popular team of any sport in the world. If you want to throw some out there, Dallas, the Yankees, probably the Manchester United. Isn't that what they are? Whatever the Manchester soccer team is.
Well, there's actually two Manchesters, but yes, Manchester United is the one
I'm talking about.
valued. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I bet you if you just say who has the most fans in the world, I bet you it's those teams.
At minimum, they're in the conversation at the top three. And
Yes,
I only say that because I don't have the data in front of me.
Yeah, we don't have the data, but my point is that's why ultimately Dallas's valuation is so high because they have so much interest and they are very, very good at translating the fan interest into marketing dollars.
Yeah, if only he was as smart about running his actual football team.
He's arrogant. That's why he's bad at that.
It'd be interesting to see when those things come out of balance, but of right now, it is having
it's not going to come out of balance. It's not going. It hasn't ever. So it's not going to start now.
Well, we also have to see how there's also a post Jerry world too.
I know, but yes, I'm talking about within the Jerry universe. I mean, but that team hasn't been to a conference championship game in since the mid '90s.
Yeah, I mean, Washington's appearance, I think, pushed them to last or second to last.
Right, and it hasn't mattered at all in terms of fandom, not one bit.
That's true. Can't argue with that. But they are not the league's number one ticket seller.
No, so we have some ticket data. I don't think we've ever done ticket data on this show before, so I was very excited to find this here. Okay, so this is also CNBC. This is called Internal NFL Ticket Report Reveals 49ers at the top and Titans at the bottom by Michael Ozanian. And so what's happened here is CNBC, whether by hook or by crook, probably because somebody leaked it to them, they got a copy of the NFL's Summary of Attendance Statistics, which is an internal document they've never shared before. 35-page report. So let's skip to the good stuff. It's a bit of a misnomer to say the 49ers are at the top. They're at the top by net income, okay? 176.5 million. But if you want to go by tickets sold, I would ask you to guess, but I think I told you the answer already before the show, so that's not fair. Dallas crushes everybody in terms of actual number of tickets sold. 800. This is, by the way, 2024. 837,723 tickets sold. The next highest looks like the Giants at 470,000. So that is about 90,000 more tickets sold for Dallas than the next largest. The very last and very worst in terms of actual number of tickets sold is the Chicago Bears at 536,000. And for those Washington fans, bringing up second to last is Washington at 571,806 actual tickets sold. Now, how you ask is San Francisco in the lead if they sold only 696,000 tickets, which is 150,000 or 140,000 less than Dallas? Well, the answer is that their average ticket price is very, very high. That's why it's $190 a ticket as compared to $158 for Dallas. And for those of you wondering, go all the way down to the bottom of this list here. Washington's at 125, which is fairly low. So your thoughts?
I mean, none of this surprises me, and it's like any kind of data, right? Especially financial data. It depends on what you're combining, what you're linking, what you're actually showing. That change, that changes these kinds of things. Which you look at anything like this, you got to look at it with a grain of thought, or at least a grain of salt, or at least look at the methodology first before overreacting to it. One thing that I find kind of interesting is in totality when you look at this list, and even looking at their net receipts, which I think for what I'm about to say is pretty relevant. It just shows you how, at best, small to mid-size the revenue from these ticket sales are important to these NFL teams.
Which is something we've said repeatedly for years. I mean, net receipts 176.5 million.
Would that cover payroll? If you just did like yearly payroll players, right, and and even net receipts, you wouldn't even cover your year's salary payroll.
I can tell you if you give my spreadsheet, because I'm a nerd like this, and I have a massive, huge spreadsheet of Washington's payroll in front of me. So I will tell you Washington's entire payroll for this year. Would you care to take a stab at it? Entire payroll for everything, including dead cap, including people in IR, all of it.
225.
267.
Oh, I got something like
you were in the ballpark.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's including dead cap and stuff. And so if you want to go
80, I got it because I had that ready to go. So their net receipts for 2024 were 87. So less than half.
Right. And if you want to go just Washington's active payroll, you actually were like pretty much right on. The active payroll is 226 million.
So that's taking out the dead money?
Yes. Well, and there's some people in IR and stuff. But point is the ticket receipts are not anywhere near enough to fund the operations of this team. Because remember, there's operational costs here too.
Yeah, we're just talking about salaries of players. We didn't even factor in coaches,
staff.
Yeah, right. This is just players.
The business staff, all that. And so, all of that, the NFL can't survive without, the communist distribution of all the other marketing revenue. They can't survive. There's not enough ticket sales to do it.
Well, they can't survive. So yes, both things can be true. But if whatever happens if their TV audience were to just walk away, I mean, that's the blood that's engorging the tick, is just the popularity of. This is very important for me to say, the popularity of football on TV.
Yeah, well, this is what I was ultimately going to here, because if you look at other sports, the NFL is actually the only sport that there's zero local marketing rights. I've done marketing deals for an NFL team, and we couldn't market games. Okay, I mean, we could market preseason games, and that's it. Because the NFL holds all the marketing rights. In every other sport, American sport at least, basketball, baseball, there are local marketing rights. And notice that there's a very much haves and have-nots, especially in baseball. Pick like the Milwaukee Brewers, which ironically are the best team in baseball this year.
It doesn't mean their marketing is better.
Right. Whereas you got the Dodgers and the Yankees have these massive payrolls and stuff. And it's because of their local marketing rights. The Dodgers, as I said before, have an absurdly large local TV deal with Time Warner, I believe it is. And so if the NFL was constructed like that, you would see teams like Dallas have a dramatically different financial position than pick your low budget team.
That's why nobody worries. That's why no one ever talks about like poor Cincinnati, right, or poor Green Bay, because
Cincinnati's much better example than Tampa Bay. Cincinnati is terrible owner, small market, NFL standards, poorly run, an owner who's a clown. They would be in trouble. And here they're on the same solid footing as everybody else because of the Karl Marx marketing strategy that they have. And so these ticket revenues are important, but it's not that important.
No, it
is for the guy who's ultimately pocketing profits, but in terms of their ability to run the team and be competitive, everybody's on the same footing.
Yeah, well, businesses this successful aren't looking to give away any revenue, right? So, of course, ticket receipts are something that they want to optimize and maximally monetize, but it is not what is driving the crazy revenues for these football teams.
Yeah, and by the way, so the lowest is the Titans, as we said, the revenue, it's 81.2 million, and it's compared to the net receipts for the 49ers at 176 million. So that's more than double.
Yeah.
But it's not hundreds of millions of dollars different. So there's a big gap, but not as big a gap as you might think. And in terms of Washington, did I already say it? I mean, Washington down here, they were at 120, they're at 87 million. So they're also, a little bit under double.
Well, you can see why the Titans are about to kick off in a new stadium in 2027 in a sports crazy and huge boom area on all levels of Nashville. So you can kind of, which is where the Titans play. So you can kind of see you can kind of see why they deemed it so essential that they get into a new stadium, because Nashville is not a small market at this point. And
Nashville is the Las Vegas of the Midwest.
Yes. Right. So you can see their urgency in getting into a new stadium by 2027, because that will most likely radically change their places on these kind of lists.
Well, and I'd like to point out that this list isn't really linked to long-term success on the field. Okay. I mean, the 49ers have had their ups and downs, but they haven't won a Super Bowl in a while. Dallas hasn't won anything in a generation. The Eagles finally did win a Super Bowl, but they went through their down years. Denver, the Raiders have been terrible forever. The Jets have been terrible forever. They're number 7. The Giants, it's been a while. The Lions have almost always been bad up until like last year. The Chiefs are only 10th. They're the best. They've been the best team in the NFL for the past several years. And if you go down, like the Steelers, who've been good, solid for multiple generations, 19th. And the Chargers, decent team, 28th. And so this is why I think that sometimes owners are accused of caring more about profits than winning. Well, this sort of shows why. So it sort of proves the point, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, there's all kinds of factors: the quality of your stadium, where your stadium is located, what's your capacity at your stadium. So there's all kinds of different factors that go into how close you are region. Well, I guess it's 2 giant New York teams, but New York's huge. So lots of factors go into these things, of which, the performance on the field is a minor one.
Yes. But for the fans, it's the only thing. But I think a lot of fans just miss this bigger picture here.
Right.
But it's interesting to see, I think now we know their ticket receipts, between 80 million and 170 million. There you go. Every NFL team that's where they are.
And speaking of, so a little mini, actually, I have 3 mini asides, but my first mini aside is that, Steve, I know we don't talk about, balls and strikes that much. However, you mentioned the Dodgers. I'll give you a quick 30 seconds to share your reaction to the retirement of Clayton Kershaw.
Yes, I'm glad you brought this up, and it's not really business-y, but Clayton Kershaw is probably my favorite player of all time, baseball player of all time. The guy's been great since 2006, I believe is when he was drafted. He came to MLB like a year later. I believe 2008 was his first year in the NFL, so maybe 2. But I'm sad to see him go in one hand, but I'm glad when he's still retiring. He's retiring when he's still more or less got all of his stuff. He's not embarrassing himself. I think he might be the greatest. He might be the greatest player in Dodger history, just overall. Considering
that's a mouthful.
Considering the length of time he's been with the team. Yes, his downside has been he's had some playoff busts. Okay. But he did win in World Series in the end. And I just want to, by the way, say one thing. I read this site, Dodgers Digest, and they were whining about the fact that Clayton Kershaw opposed the Dodgers honored this group called the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence 2 years ago. And I'm not going to get into that too much, but it was, suffice to say, it was a LGBTQ pro thing, but they were making fun of Catholicism basically. And Kershaw, I'm not going to get into that, but Kershaw declined to participate in it, and they were bashing it. That's stupid. Get over yourselves, Dodgers Digest. But I'm really sad to see him go, but I'm at the same time happy it worked out for him, and he didn't embarrass himself. He didn't move to another team. His wife was at the game last night with their kids, so I'm very happy for him. And things will never be the same in Dodgerland again. But I think at this point he contributed more to the franchise than Oral Hershiser. Maybe not Jackie Robinson just because of his historical level of impact on the game. But beyond that, I can't think of anyone who maybe had more of an impact on the franchise than Clayton Kershaw.
All right. So I had made a mental note to give you your Clayton Kershaw moment. So
I appreciate that.
My little mini aside here is that I'm reading, which I'm not finished with it, but the parts I've gotten through, I would heavily endorse the brand new Seth Wickersham book, American Kings, I think, the biography of the quarterback. It's basically a history of the quarterback as a cultural sports and stories of the men who've played it. And it goes all the way back into the late 1800s. I mean, and it goes all the way to Patrick Mahomes and Caleb Williams's draft lead up. So it's pretty wide ranging, but they have these hysterical stories. This is relevant to what we were just talking about. It has these hysterical stories about how the powers that be in media and football were so upset and concerned that TV was going to destroy their ticket revenue. So, how do we combat this new existential crisis to our sport?
And today they barely care about the TV revenue, about the local, or the ticket revenue.
When I got to that section, I was as they say, laughing out loud.
You said you had a third aside.
Yeah, I can't remember. We're two in. But we'll move to our next thing, which is still relevant. Some interesting. We got a little bit of a peek at how the league is starting to think about where, who, and what is broadcast. In what decisions they make about what sections of the country get to see what games. I get Howard Katz. Was that the name of the guy who used to be in charge of this, who just retired?
Yes.
And he was basically like, I know the fans love this. Give 80% of the country this. And to a degree, I mean, this guy helped to architect where we are right now with all the things that we're talking about, the success of TV, football on TV. But now that he's gone, they brought in the nerds who are crunching all kinds of data to tell us, which in the end result means there's some new diversity in what games you might be able to see, and you're not dominated by whatever the people thought the marquee, game of the week matchup was back in July.
Yeah. So first of all, the story was in Sports Business Journal. And you're going to get locked out if you read too many Sports Business Journal articles without paying them a lot of money. But this one is called Data Takes on a Bigger Role in NFL TV Scheduling Headquarters in the Post-Howard Katz Era by Ben Fisher, dated September 18, 2025. So the NFL historically had specific people in jobs for a long, long, long period of time. The guy I dealt with for the Super Bowl I worked on had been there for 1 billion years. He was Dr. Super Bowl, basically. He was all things NFL Super Bowl. And this guy, Howard Katz, was all things scheduling. Now, what they're saying is, and so he was an old guy, and like you said, in your kind of farcical way, he was just planning all this based on where he viewed the trends going. So what the story says is that now the NFL is using a company called Recentive Analytics, who does predictive modeling. It says Recentive helps the NFL create its initial schedule. And so what they're doing here as Recentive is taking viewer data and ratings and plug it into a big computer system and barfing out exactly what schedule and where games are broadcast would maximize ratings for the NFL. And so they mention as a key here, as sort of the introduction to the story, rather, is Joe Burrow's injured toe. Because the fact that Joe Burrow is in Cincinnati boosts Cincinnati's data up in the Recentive analytics predictions. But if he's out, and turf toe is tough, okay? It sounds easy, but
He's already out 3 months. Yeah.
I saw who's Travis Kelsey's brother?
Jason.
Jason Kelsey talking about how tough turf toe was. Anyway, and so that is going to rejigger the Recentive data for the marketability of the Bengals on TV, and so they will probably end up moving around some of the games. So where this is going though is they make certain games available for like 60% of the nationwide audience compared to others, which are going to be 80%. Others are going to be less, and all this is based on what the Recentive analytics is barfing out, as opposed to what's coming out of Howard Katz's head. So this is a smarter way to do it.
Yeah,
Your
probably
thoughts?
ultimately. Well, definitely, probably. Although you got to give Katz his flowers because he did help this juggernaut. But I think it's super interesting, right? So, like Steve sort of mentioned it, but this week the article kind of frames it in this kind of week 5 dilemma, right? With the Joe Burrow, Jake Browning does move the numbers down. So, so they're looking at Bengals, Lions 4:25 kickoff, which is, people think prime time is the magic slot for football on TV. It actually isn't. It's the featured games at the 4 o'clock window. That's the most valuable 3-hour NFL block. So they put Bengals Lions on anybody's whiteboard. That looks like a great matchup, right? So you can understand why they did that when they did the schedule. But now with the Joe Burrow-less Bengals, it's kind of interesting here with the Washington angle, because the game that was the kind of B game, and they originally be seen by 20% of the country, which is basically the local markets of those two teams, is Commanders Chargers. Now, Jaden, we'll see about Jaden Daniels, but obviously the Commanders are on the rise in popularity, and it looks like the Chargers are good, and Justin Herbert is about to put together the season everyone's been waiting for him to have. So that Commanders Chargers game starts to look way more attractive. So now with data, they can know that, and they can basically turn those dials. So, okay, because they already kind of committed to some feature game of the week with the Bengals game, it probably gets their broadcasters, et cetera. But instead of that being 80-20, now they say, well, if you turn the dial up on the East Coast to New York, Philadelphia, places where, there's interest in that matchup. Same thing on the West Coast. Suddenly if you're in Washington State, are you now seeing Chargers, Commanders over Bengals, Lions? And now the data will tell them where the probabilities are, what would suggest is the case, and they can adjust accordingly kind of in real time.
Yeah. Now, I mean, Howard Katz could have come up with Joe Burrow being out means less people care about the Bengals. And so this is not the be all end all of it here. But the point is, what this Recentive system is doing is taking historical viewing numbers and predicting the future based on the history. And so, but the system is smart enough to factor in things like Joe Burrow, or in case of Washington, Jane Daniels is going to be out. So less people are probably going to, so like Washington Raiders becomes much less interesting.
Right.
With Jane Daniels out.
And the league is more willing to make the league and it's the same thing at this point, but the broadcasters and the league, are willing to make these adjustments. The other thing that this data potentially, which is I think why probably ultimately, I think this kind of like, hey, we can adjust where these and get better ratings basically if we diversify what games are broadcast, I think is the B result here. The A result that they're really probably started along this path with the data is because they want to build more and more case for flex scheduling in the second half of the year.
Well, they are, and they're doing it more and more.
Right, and they're turning up that dial too. So now, but this really, I think, probably helps to give them the numerical basis, because that's not, they've been doing, the flex. It's been going on for 15 years, like once a year or whatever. They can move a game from Sunday to Monday night or whatever. But they're talking, but what the NFL wants is they want to basically be moving things around the schedule on a weekly basis, kind of from Thanksgiving on. That's their desire.
Well, and I wonder what's not addressing here is how the teams feel about this. I don't know if they care at all, because the revenue, like we just talked about for a while, the revenue doesn't change one dime for anybody based on this. And so do teams care? Do the marketing arms, offices of these teams care whether they have X number of national games? I mean, the coaches would care if they've got too
You're
many
going to
prime
Thursday
time,
to Sunday night and all that stuff.
which is
Yeah.
what Washington's doing a lot of this year. But does anybody care whether they're the featured at 4 o'clock afternoon game? I don't know the answer to that. It's not in here, but from a financial standpoint, there'd be no reason to.
Well, yes, I agree with that. The only financial reason for the league to get better at this and is to show more ratings. And as we know, they have a
Well,
buyout.
I know why the league
Yeah.
matters. I'm saying on the individual teams.
No, right. Except for their interests or our interests, which we've been talking about. If you want one little bit of evidence that, because nobody said, knew, understood, or had any concept of the mini buy 4 years ago, right? But now,
Right.
because they're, with games all over the schedule and so now now basically it's a foregone conclusion and everyone just understands what a mini buy is. And we understand that you basically, one of the benefits and detractions about getting primetime games is you get these mini buys, and it's a thing now.
Yes. Yeah. I'd love to see, maybe we're going to have to, not right now on the fly, but someday we're going to do a story on Thursday night ratings as compared to Monday night as compared to Sunday, because I would love to know exactly what the NFL is getting out of these Thursday broadcasts. I mean, what we have done is that Amazon has not fallen off at all compared to the NFL Network, which was doing it previously.
Yeah, I think they're gotten to the point where they're averaging above 10 million viewers.
Yeah, and so I don't know how that compares to Monday Night Football and Sunday Night Football.
And they have Amazon has turned up which we predict. I mean, which was obvious. It's not even about like patting myself on the back for predicting, but this season you can really tell that they have integrated the purchase now features on the broadcast at a new level. Like the in small box commercials, click here, use your remote, buy new toilet paper, buy your, Jaden Daniels just had an electric play. Suddenly, you're going to get a pop-up window, one click buy, NFL Pro Shop. I mean, it
is a wise and smart thing to do.
Yes, of course. But I'm just saying this year you can see the increase from last season's Amazon broadcasts.
Just incidentally, for those of you who don't know, I discovered this accidentally. If you are a subscriber to NFL Plus Premium, the Hogs Die is because we watch film and whatnot on, later on it. I do not have Amazon Prime, so I cannot watch the Thursday games. And with Stream East gone, it makes it impossible. But I realized, again, accidentally, that they broadcast the Thursday night games live on NFL Plus. So, yeah, they don't broadcast any other game that I'm aware of on NFL Plus except the Thursday games.
Well, that's a little. Hey, grab the scraps where you can get them.
It allowed me to watch the game in real time.
So there you go. Yeah. So pretty fascinating stuff. We get one other quick hitter on the NFL, that is. The NFL is starting to get a little bit, hey guys, what are you doing? But then maybe not, about this new exhibition flag football, Saudi Arabian, paid for by the Saudi Athletic Fund or whatever that's called. The same thing, the Live Golf money, basically. And Tom Brady is signed on apparently to be come out of retirement to be this. But a bunch of NFL players want to get into it. But then that had to be arranged. But Steve found a little. They seem to have figured that out, right?
Yeah. So this is so dumb. This story is at Pro Football Talk. NFL reminds teams of CBA rules regarding Saudi Arabian flag football by the Jimmy Kimmel of sports writers, and I mean that in a disparaging way as possible. Mike Florio, dated September 19th, and so I didn't know this until Chris sent this to me. But apparently there's a flag football tournament in Saudi Arabia. Didn't know Saudi Arabia knew what football was, much less having a tournament. But the press release they released said several active players. Tom Brady, yes. But Saquon Barkley, CeeDee Lamb, Christian McCaffrey, Sauce Gardner, Myles Garrett, Brock Bowers, Max Crosby, and Tyreek Hill. And so the issue that Jimmy Kimmel was bringing up was in this column is that it's
You mean
not
Mike Florio?
well, see, Jimmy Kimmel's a smarmy, disparaging idiot, as is Mike Florio. So I get them, the two of them, confused because they're so similar. Um, Chris is shaking his head at me. I have nothing but contempt. I've never liked Jimmy Kimmel, especially not this week. But so the point here that Kimmel was raising is that the event is not an NFL sanctioned event. Now the CBA and consequently player contracts limits players' rights to do things that are dangerous um, and still get paid. Okay. And so, in other words, if you go out dirt bike riding on, I'm making this up, but maybe that's not a good example. If you go race cars, say, and you get in a massive accident, it's your contract is not going to allow you to continue to collect your contract and go to IR and still get paid because you voluntarily put yourself in this dangerous act without team permission. So what Florio / Kimmel was raising is that this flag football term is not an NFL sanctioned event, which therefore means that if these players get hurt, the teams would not have to pay them. So what he was questioning was that. Now, the denouement of this is that there was an update at the bitter end of the column that says all 8 players that we read off have now received approval from their teams to participate in the event. And then the players are going to be covered by the same insurance the NFL uses for the other things they let them do, the Pro Bowl, the Olympics, other sporting events. And so basically that means that they're more or less going to be insured and protected if they get hurt in this. Personally, if I were NFL teams, I would say absolutely not to something like this. You're not going to play in some stupid Saudi Arabian flag football tournament. No, Tom Brady can do what he wants, but the active players, I would absolutely not let them do it. That's my view.
I would share that. Yes, I wouldn't do that either. Why would you risk? I mean, the names you read off are superstars that are positioned.
They're premium players.
Yeah, at the top of the salary, top of the salary chart, so to speak. So, but I guess here's the thing. Here's probably the long view rationale because I think the NFL is. I mean, we know this from the Olympics and other things, but is heavily involved and is making a ginormous bet on flag football because they think, and they could be right. When I say they think, I don't mean that even as a pejorative. The theory is that flag football is saving youth football, which very much could be true. I'll tell you what, I walked through my local park, the Great Prospect Park in Brooklyn on a fall afternoon, both weekday and weekend, and it is full with flag football and flag football practices and games. So I think what the NFL knows, or they think their theory is that they need youth flag football to replace football probably till the middle and high school ages. And so to them, anything that's going to raise the value and profile of flag football is a long-term benefit to them.
Yeah, I mean, and Chris, I know you have a daughter who I'm assuming probably didn't play football, but like flag football's always been a thing. Like one of mine played flag football, but it's typically stops at like I forget the age, but like 10 or something, and beyond that, then it turns into tackle football. So I think your point is that what the NFL is promoting is flag football for a longer period of time in order to protect from injuries, which in turns makes parents more willing to allow their kids to play in the wake of things like the concussion lawsuit, the CTE stuff. Parents are very nervous. And so if the NFL can promote flag football for longer than, a bunch of 8-9-year-olds or whatever it was, when my kids stopped playing it, that's benefit to them. So that's probably where they're going with this, I would assume. And the other thing about it I would point out is that the NFL has placed a huge emphasis in recent years on international marketing. Now, they're not going to put a team in Riyadh, okay? But just having anything NFL overseas is a net benefit to them simply because it's more overseas coverage.
Yeah, in an area awash with money. So, yeah, it doesn't surprise me at the long-term level. I don't, Max Crosby just signed a massive contract, I think, over this past summer or in the offseason.
All these guys have big contracts. Saquon Barkley, Christian McCaffrey, Sauce Gardner, they all have huge contracts.
So I wouldn't personally risk that. But, hey, I'm also not surprised that they're expendable in that larger play.
And I would maybe recommend just leaving Tyreek Hill there and not letting him come back. But, that's on a personal level. He's the guy who punched his pregnant girlfriend in the stomach. So I think he can just stay in Saudi for all I care.
Yeah. The trade market for Tyreek Hill seems to have dried up in the last 7 to 10 days. I'm not going to go off here too
But
much.
how surprised are you? Are you going to get into Brady?
Yeah.
How surprised are you? Go ahead.
So it does. Yeah. So, Tom Brady, obviously, big draw for a variety of reasons, doesn't surprise me. This is the guy that jumped on crypto, jumped on Sam Altman. Like he seems to be out there ahead on a bunch of this stuff. No amount of money is too small for him to go after. So it surprises me 0% that he becomes the face boy for the Saudi athletic fund.
I guarantee you this is probably through that Saudi investment fund, probably doing this, I would assume. Yeah. And they pay huge money. We went over the live golf stuff. The numbers are enormous. They're paying these players a lot. That's why they're willing to do it.
Yeah, of course. And so Tom Brady, just another Mr. Check cashing machine himself. And it does bring up one thing we have talked about him before, but it's of a kin here. This stuff with Brady in the booth and an owner that has kind of blown up this week a little bit. Again, I don't understand why this wasn't ever an issue, or hasn't always been an issue, I guess I should say. But this week, the microscope is really hitting it. And I actually think there is a potential that this isn't going to be sustainable because, first of all, like idiots, the NFL rolled back the Brady rules or whatever they called it, which kept him out of production meetings and it could only be Zoom and couldn't go.
Let's go backwards a little bit. Tom Brady, after retired, became a minority share owner.
Well, actually, first he got the contract. First he got the broadcasting contract.
Yes. Correct. And then after that, he then bought into the Raiders. And so the concern that was raised was, if for those who don't know, the broadcasters show up days early and they go interview both teams and they spend time in like locker rooms and they practice. And that's how they get a lot of their insights and stuff for the games. And so the concern that they initially totally barred Brady, the NFL said, you can broadcast what you want to, but you can't spend time in all the locker rooms and talking to the coaches and watching practice because you're an owner of the Raiders. And that's an unfair competitive advantage. And so then those rules were relaxed slightly last year.
Well, last year they were in because last year was his first year of broadcasting.
They were relaxed for this year. That's what I was trying to say.
So they put rules in place last year that were still kind of wimpy. And then they relaxed them this year because everyone was like, everything's fine. No big deal. Why was everyone worried? See, everything can work out fine. So they relaxed the rules. And by week 2, basically because the booth crew actually did their job and were like, yeah, we're, covering the Raiders game on prime time, which was ESPN because it was one of that double header, I believe, or whatever it was. I can't remember.
It was the Monday night football. It was one of the 2 Monday night football games.
So, and they pointed out that Chip Kelly talks to Brady 2 or 3 times a week about game plans. They had Brady sitting in the coaching booth with a headset on. How, and of course that's going to happen. Brady doesn't join and you don't recruit Brady at whatever number it was, like 3%, 4%, 5% ownership stake. You bring him in because you want that. And there's stories going back since he bought in 2 summers ago about he's got opinions on this quarterback and he's advised, so he's
that's why you have it. They can get anybody to buy 5% if they
right.
want.
Yes.
They were Brady for a reason.
Yes. To get a general manager, coach, owner. And now people are shocked about this. It's crazy to me. And now all week, this week, you've got your Chip Kellys and your Carroll and even Brady and NFL and the executives and blah, 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 all saying, oh, well, they overstated that. And we don't really talk ball. We just, we just catch up. Brady's a great conversationalist. So we just talk. Come on, people.
First of all, Brady isn't a great conversationalist.
Yeah, right. As evidenced by his ability in the booth.
Yeah.
But how it's like, what's that saying? Don't pee down my back and tell me it's raining. This is crazy. It's crazy, and I don't know why you'd put your brand in this much jeopardy. You say, and that there has been there is growing concern. If I was a small small fish betting man, but if I could go to one of those futures markets right now and put $10 on Brady will not be in a booth in 2026, I would place the bet.
Would you? I mean, because the NFL also likes him there because he's so popular. Now he's like you said, he's not good in the booth. He doesn't have the personality for it. He's not gregarious. He speaks in a very kind of monotone, boring way. Obviously, he knows a ton about football, but he doesn't present very well. That's what we're saying.
Also, why is he going to give away his pearls to swine when he's helping the Raiders? So
well,
even
that's the whole point. I mean,
yeah.
if you're gonna broadcast games and you're gonna have insight into the opposing teams, it's an unfair advantage to the Raiders because you're not going to convince me that he's not saying, "Hey, look, man, I saw the Chargers or whoever do this." You're not going to convince me he's not telling the Raiders this. He's talking to Chip.
It's
Chip Kelly and you're not
implausible.
talking about the next episode of Family Matters, okay?
Right in the middle of football season,
right? These guys are like obsessed with football. That I can promise you, that's what they're doing.
Yeah, you can't spend the last 25 years telling me about how maniacal, do whatever it takes to win Brady, right? Like that's part of his myth. And suddenly he's going to be able to, I can separate church and state as I flow in and out of these spaces.
Yeah, I went to Five Guys the other night and had a great burger. I think you ought to try it, Chip. I mean, that's not what's happening.
No, it's crazy.
I bet the NFL is putting up with this only because it's Tom Brady. Only because a lot of people view him as the best player ever, certainly the new generation. And so they're willing to put up with a lot. There's many people who would not work with.
I think
maybe no one else.
We're going to go through a second season of him not being very good. At that point, this is all relative, but he will at least put 2 years in so you can start to justify that contract. And I think this story isn't going to necessarily go away. And those factors are why I put my $10 futures bet on him out of the booth. And if we spend another year talking about how bad he sucks, then the hit from it becomes less.
How long did you say your bet would be?
I would say he would not begin as a Fox booth broadcaster. Maybe they moved him to the studio or whatever to finish off his contract, or have him as a commentator or whatever. But he will not be broadcasting games as the number one color guy for Fox or any broadcast network in 2026.
2026. Okay, I'm going to give him another year of it, just to disagree with you, just to have a bet.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's going to last long either. And also, I mean, Brady's got a lot of other things going on. Eventually he's going to say, I don't need this.
Yeah, right. So bye-bye Brady. We've gone long, Steve. We could probably skip our last story. Would you agree?
Yeah, we'll tease you. We had another story involving, we'll do it another day. We had another NIL story. There's a Congressman Fry, who I believe is from
South Carolina. No, South Carolina.
Yeah, South Carolina. You're right. Anyway, and he did a podcast about a bill he's put forth called the SCORE Act that's intended to fix college football. It's a way too in-depth of a conversation for the next few minutes. So, and plus the bill isn't even out of committee yet. So once the bill gets out of committee, maybe we'll come back to it.
I was scanning the bill. I don't even think he's the lead sponsor.
I'd never heard of it before we saw the story, which tells you something. So.
This, if it gets out of committee, it might become a bigger story. But if you want to start your Googles, it's called,
we'll come back to that another day.
The SCORES Act. They spend more time getting the dumb names and acronyms right than anything else.
So, I mean, my question is whether naming it after the famous New York City strip club that Howard Stern used to advocate for, or is it something else?
No, I think it is something else, Steve. I would guess. All right, Steve, how's it going on the hog side? That preseason optimism is grounded as of now.
Yes, certainly Washington looked terrible against Green Bay, and now the quarterback's out for at least this week. Maybe more. We'll see. He's got a sprained left knee. We will discuss all of that on the Hogsty podcast, which is released every Thursday, as well as in our regular written content.
Oh, pretty hysterical. And we're not going to extend it, but I just got my phone just alerted me to a new Diana Rossini column on The Athletic, and the headline, "What I'm Hearing on the Tom Brady Problem."
Okay.
So there you go.
Tease for next week.
All right, Steve. We'll see you in 2 weeks.